Missing anyone? Dan? Hi, Dan.
Here.
Garrett? Kelly, I'm not seeing yet. Who else am I missing?
Just the Kellys, John.
Just the Kellys. Well, that makes it easier. Do we want to give them another minute?
Ben, I like that article from the Concord playground incident.
Yeah, that was discussed this morning on one of my meetings.
Oh,
Yeah, because the Concord BA, I think, was on the line with us.
oh boy.
Yep.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, how are you, John?
Great. So
Good.
I'm thinking, just in the interest of time, based on oh, there's Kelly McConnell coming in right now. So I'm thinking we could get started. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And I'm not seeing, although, is there any public out there? I'm looking. One phone-in caller. So at this point, if the phone-in caller, and that's what it says the name is, would like to address the board, hoping Josh can help facilitate that.
They should be able to talk now.
Okay.
Oh, you know what, guys? That might be me, Garrett.
Oh, Garrett,
Usually
hi.
down with my phone. It usually goes in, and I use the participant password, which I did. But yeah, that's my number, 781. So.
Okay. So
474
then, okay. So then it looks like we have no members of the public at this point. So I'll move right ahead to agenda review. And I know, Jay, you had one item you wanted to bring into the agenda, and I can open that to you to discuss if you'd like.
Sure. We'd like to add an agenda item to discuss deciding on a date to end our school year for students. So this is something Dan spoke about at the last meeting, the need that we have for planning, for figuring out what we're going to do as far as credit recovery, and then planning any adaptations to curriculum for the coming year. We thought if we had 2 weeks with our teachers, that would be great. So we want to talk about possible dates for a closure, for a ending of instruction.
Okay. Does anyone have any question, comment, or are we good with adding that? And I'm thinking potentially add that right to the first part of the business requiring discussion, just to kind of get that part going, because I'd imagine that might take a little bit longer than some of the others.
Be fine.
Yeah. Kelly, I think, did you put your hand up? I think I saw you.
I did, but doesn't seem like an appropriate time to ask the question. I'm fine for wherever it goes.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other agenda items to add or move or remove? Okay, then we will jump right into business requiring discussion, and let's kick it right off with the school day discussion. And I think this is a moment where I will defer back to Jay.
Okay, what I'd like to do, if I can figure out how to do it, is share my screen. I got to get back onto the video here. So throughout the state, the DOE in New Hampshire has offered us the option of asking them to allow us to calculate our school year based on hours instead of days. And that's something you can do at any given year. The deadline for that had elapsed, but the DOE decided to extend that now given the COVID situation. So we have the ability to appeal, not appeal, but you send in a form and ask them to verify your hours, and then we could truncate the school year so that we could, again, do that planning work that we really have to jump into. One proposal that was made by the administrative team was to have sort of a period of time. If we were to allow ourselves about 2 weeks, it would give us time to do the curriculum work we need to do. It would also let us simultaneously, at least at the high school level, offer credit recovery for those students that for whatever reason haven't had time or the ability to get on to do their work. Some of those kids that are maybe late in the game as far as warming to remote learning would be able to catch up conceivably. So the date right now that the teachers union and the administrators have in mind is June 5th. And June 5th, I asked Shannon to calculate our hours, and she's done that. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see if it's the right sheet. So this is our hours calculation. And you can see our hours requirement are 990 for elementary and 945 for high school, middle school. And as you can see here, Shannon has computed a school year that ends June 5th, which would be 165 days, so 15 days short of the normal 180. But in terms of hours of instruction, we have 1152, 1118, and 1155 respectively. So well above the amount of hours required for a regular school year. So we don't even need a special waiver, which we had contemplated asking for. What we need to discuss though is if you feel that that June 5th is a good date. If you would like to talk about that, we can kind of play out the pros and cons. And then if we have the blessing of the board on this, I would then apply for the waiver to the New Hampshire DOE. And then I would also take Dan French, the Secretary of Ed in Vermont, up on his offer to allow us to remain unified and follow New Hampshire law in this particular case. So that's where I am. Let me see if I can get back now. Does anyone need to examine this sheet any longer?
No, thanks.
Okay. So yes, Dan.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, Jay, thanks. I guess I have a couple of questions, and then I just want to say what my main consideration or my main consideration is. So first, what is credit recovery? I don't know what that is.
So the credit recovery generically is usually used for students that are struggling in school and need to make up for one reason or another a credit for a course. And so often it's done in summer. There are districts that use online learning as a way for kids to recover credits if they failed a course, for example. So this would be a period of time where we would have teachers splitting time essentially between doing the long-term planning that needs to be done and also working with some of the students that for whatever reason didn't complete the work required to get a credit in their courses.
All right, and where does the teachers union come into this conversation?
Well, anytime we're talking about working conditions, the union will have something to say. Whether they legally have any standing or not is another question, but they had asked me for a meeting to talk about what a possible end of the school year would be. And their interest in it is largely aligned with our own. It's that they're feeling stressed about what do they do next year. Nobody has any illusion that the curriculum has been unaltered. And I think at the lower levels, there are some concerns about students that may need additional instruction, whether it's through special education or 504, or just kids that for whatever reason didn't get enough to really progress the way they should. So this would give us that time to plan. And then the other question the union had, and one that we're thinking about as well, is what sort of programming do we want to offer this summer? We have in the past had extended school year programming for special needs students, but we think that there's probably going to be a number of folks interested in having their kids warm up right before the school year starts. We thought about maybe having a double session where there's typically we do our extended school year program in July, sort of midsummer. We were thinking maybe of having two sessions, one earlier and then one closer to the beginning of the school year to maybe spread out that learning a little better. So that's another thing that we'd want to plan.
All right, so good. So that's a lead into what my whatever consideration is. So I guess the anticipation is that, like, all right, I don't know what the anticipation is for the summer, first of all. I mean, generally for people, you know, whether families will get, well, anybody will go away or anything like that. But there is a part of me that worries about, I mean, effectively starting the year early next year. And then, because I mean, again, so this comes back to this idea or belief, I think, that everybody thinks that in the fall, we're just going to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, I sure hope so. And I imagine, I can't believe that the union doesn't want to talk to you about that, because that's working conditions. But, you know, the idea, I mean, again, so you're effectively talking about starting the school year early. Which certainly, you know, if families have any plans that can be realized at all, I imagine any vacations are going to be late in the summer, you know, just in terms of the world getting back to order, that if anybody's able to go away, it's going to be the end of the summer, not at the beginning of the summer.
Right.
And so I don't know what's going on in everyone's house. So I really only have my household and a few others that I know relatively well. My druthers would be that the teachers take some time at the end of the year to try and reinforce the concepts that they know they're going to need in the fall in classes that depend. I'm really speaking about the high school now, and that the teachers reinforce the concepts that those kids are going to need next year at the end of the year. You know, there's always a lot of dross in the curriculum. And then when you start fresh in September, some large fraction of what you learned the previous year is actually not relevant. And the teachers, I'm sure, you know, have some idea of what the really important stuff is that those kids are going to need for the next year from the classes that they're currently taking. And so my preference, for what it's worth, is that something toward the end of school start to focus on where they think they're going to begin in the fall. If that can all be done up to June 5th, that's okay. But I'm really hesitant to approve an end date that has embedded in it an early start date to the school next year. Okay.
I'm going to real quick. I see a couple hands, but I have a message from Kelly who I'm going to help her with some noise cancellation and ask the question for her. She's wondering about, would teachers have to make up snow days, or could that be part of the waiver considered? I think I asked that right.
So the answer to that, John, is by converting to hours, we have more than enough hours to accommodate the snow days that we had.
Great, thank you. So I saw Ben's hand up, and then I think Tom after that.
Hey, just clarifying question. What was the original end of school day as of yesterday?
Boy, I want to say it was June 18th after the snow days.
So then just pardon my ignorant question, but intuitively, I would say if we had to make a choice, I'd rather it be longer, since the students need that much more time to retain information. So what's the rationale to make it shorter?
So to varying degrees, we're hearing stories of fatigue on the part of families working through remote learning. And I know there's a mix. People are having different experiences. For some people, it's been great. For others, it's pretty taxing. For us, we have the teachers for a limited amount of time. So we can't go beyond our contracted number of days with the teachers. So the idea would be that we would be able to work together and do a lot of this important planning in that 2 weeks. So, if does that help, Ben?
It does. I guess looking from a parent who, like Dan, is doing this at home, but with much smaller children, for me, it's more, yeah, it's hard, and they're certainly not getting what I wish they had if they were physically present at school. But if we cut it off 2 weeks earlier, that's still less information that they're going to get and less information they'll retain. So for me, that argument makes it sound almost the exact opposite. Like if we were to change the dates, they need more time since their uptake on a daily level is significantly decreased. Now, obviously, I'm not saying let's make it longer than June 18th, but I guess the argument of making it earlier hasn't struck me yet. I'm done.
Okay, so John, if I should,
Yeah,
I'd
go
like
ahead,
to
Jeff.
answer both Ben and Dan.
Yeah.
To Dan's earlier point, one of the things that they also mentioned needing to plan for is the possibility of further remote learning. So we jumped into remote learning with about a week to get things right. We've learned a lot by our trial and error. And so one thing that was mentioned in our conversation today was using some time to do some of the things you've already all asked for. Making the schedule built around remote learning as one option. We have been given reason to believe, and I think Jamie's been in some meetings with the BAs as well, that we may have a difficult road ahead. There may be some sort of hybrid that gets imposed on us where classes come in on a staggered schedule if they are able to come in. So there still are a lot of variables, and we are anticipating a lot of different planning needs in addition to figuring out what skills are going to need to be reinforced. I don't think that maybe in some classes there have been some approximation of the normal curriculum, but my assessment so far is that we're doing a very watered down version of what we normally would be providing face to face of necessity. And that goes for every level. Really, the intent at the elementary level is to keep kids engaged, keep some sense of community, keep them active and using their brains and learning, but a lot less content and a lot less depth, honestly. And so if we're going to go into the beginning of the next school year, possibly remote, there's got to be some way to do a better job with that. And it's going to require teacher time to plan that. Wow, lots of hands.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay. I know Tom's hand has been up electronically for quite a bit, so I'll go that way first.
Thanks, John. Jay, I just have a couple of questions and one comment. So I may have missed the first one. The way we're counting hours, I assume, is the way the state is going to allow us to count hours as they would have been counted if they were normal school days, not remote school days, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that answers that. Second question is, how would this change affect the kids that go to the tech center? And then the comment is, I'm not opposed to ending the school year earlier for the reasons you said. I just wonder if the teachers may be able to use some of the time leading up to then to prepare a little bit more of a summer reading list or activities thing based on what the kids, I mean, we know they're not getting everything this year, but leave them with something more for the summer to work on their own if we are going to end earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, go ahead and respond. Is that
sure? Yeah, and also this will also tie back to another point that Dan raised earlier. The idea of starting the school year early by having summer programming. My assumption, and again, we've only begun talking about this, so there is no plan per se, but the idea would be that that'd be voluntary for one thing. And so if people did have vacations and people are able to travel, I guess they'd have to make a decision about whether or not they were going to be participating in whatever programming is available over the summer. In all likelihood, any summer program we do provide will be remote. So sort of the remedy for what we feel was the cause of the shortcoming will be more of the same. It's a little bit of a challenge, but Tom, I'm sorry, the second part of your question.
Yeah, so, well, the comment too is more to just more of an extended reading list and type of things that the kids
Right.
could work on over the summertime. The first question, which is pretty straightforward, is just how we would work on coordinating with the tech center and the kids who go there with an earlier start.
Tech center, we have a meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll hear from Doug what his plan is for the tech center, and would obviously do whatever we could to make sure that we mesh there. But so what we could offer in the summertime would be, like, if we're having remediation, if you want to use that word, something very skills focused would be one possibility, especially for the lower grade levels. But then yeah, I could see building a library, sort of maybe a more organized and deeper version of what we did for the April break, for folks to consult over the summer.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks. Dan, I saw your hand popped up in the electronic side.
Thanks. Jay, thanks again. This is complicated. So my first question is, so I guess the idea was to have some of the planning within the time that the teachers are still working, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because, right, I mean, the administrators work year round, but the teachers don't work year
Correct.
round. Okay, so I'm surely sensitive to that. That's why I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record around the following idea, which is simply that, look, this is a weird time. Curriculum, quite simply, has got to change for the rest of this year and for at least the beginning of next year. And then, God willing, as my mother would have said, in fall of 2021, we're something approximating back to normal, and there's some recalibration to the old curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
The current curriculum for the classes where there's dependence on the material from one year to another simply need to be streamlined at this point. You just need to know what you need to know by the end of this year. You need to figure out where you're going to be at the beginning of next year, match that up with the end date of next year and all the material that you actually need in the math classes and in the language classes. And you just have to make choices. It's like writing an article. You think you need all these pieces of information in it, and you need a good editor is what you need at the end of the day to say, you know what, you actually didn't need that to make your point. And I just feel like we're continually in this mode where we think we're going to catch up in some way. And I think the honest fact of the matter is that there's stuff we're not going to do this year. There's stuff we're not going to do next year. And we need to make those choices. I'm not really comfortable with the idea of a voluntary catch-up period, because then, look, I'm an instructor too, and I have that. If I know some kids have been in the voluntary catch-up period, I'm going to start with all the material, figuring that, all right, the kids who could make it, the kids who couldn't make it, and we're ready to go. It's just, I mean, for all the equity reasons that we're talking about, that's not reasonable. The reasonable assumption is that the summer is going to be as big a disaster in some way as the year was. Hopefully, we're all going to be back in class in the fall. Some of the fall term is going to have to be spent doing review. It's just the way it is, in a more significant way than we've done in previous years. And eventually, we hope that the curricula meet the standard curriculum and the current curriculum. But they're not going to meet by throwing in everything that we did every year. And those are the hard decisions we have to make curricularly. I'm not happy with these matching ideas.
Jay, go ahead.
So that is something I brought up with the teacher. I met with Liz from the HEA and Anya from the NEA this morning. And we had this kind of essentially the same conversation. And one point that Liz made was that the teachers understand that they need to do that we want to do that, but they felt that they needed to have an end date for this stuff this year before they could start to make that alignment. And that's what they shared with me. That was another one of their reasons for wanting to have a date certain, whatever that date is, for when this period is going to end. And then they said then they'd be able to help to do that alignment. And they said that even us asking to sort of hit the high points, tell us what are the key concepts that need to be learned between now and whether it's June 5th or June 18th. They said they needed to have some sense for what is this remaining period of time, because that would help them figure out, is it 3 key concepts? Is it 5 key concepts? So essentially trying to do scope and sequence within that little time period.
Yeah, I mean, so that all sounds great. And so again, what I'm saying is that realizing that the fall is going to be different. And I do appreciate that the teachers are going to have to do some hard work, and that we have to do it in a period of time in which we're actually paying them. And
right.
so, you know, I think maybe kind of integrating what Tom had brought up. I mean, that this idea maybe in those last 2 weeks to also provide review materials for kids, just to reinforce this. I mean, we're not going to have finals in any way this year. So, but on the other hand, that doesn't mean you can't have review packets that as if you had finals, so that the kids understand the material that they're responsible for, and have that final you know, review, reinforcement, all that stuff, maybe with an office hour or two, but realizing that the majority of the effort is going to be spent on this curricular, you know, modification. So, you know, so, all right, thanks.
Thanks. I'm gonna, if everyone's okay, that we actually have a question from the community. She had called in and I think missed the first part, but did ask a question through the chat. And if is it okay if I bump to that question? Is everyone all right with that? Cool. The question is, or comment is, I have a 5th grader who is profoundly dyslexic and ADHD combined type. I think offering some tuition in mid-August, even voluntarily, would be a great idea. Maybe just with special educators, if this would be possible. So maybe Jay, I can push that towards you.
Sure. Right now, we are waiting for guidance from the state with regard to official special education programming, which is called end of school year, or I'm sorry, extended school year, ESY. They're telling us right now to plan for both face-to-face instruction, because if we have small numbers of students, in theory, we could meet with them, or to have some sort of remote intervention that we provide. But that is in the works, and we will be making that available. We're just waiting for some more detail from the state around how. And then, if I could, John, just to follow up on Dan's last comment and Tom's comment, there's no reason why we couldn't convene our curriculum committee, or what was the old name of that committee, and come up with a list. Give us a bulleted list of the things that you'd like to see in the plan that the teachers and the administrators create. And then we can report back to the board prior to the close of school. We could do something, whether it's at the Dresden meeting and that way they have clearer guidance, and we can make sure that they're hitting all the targets that you think are most important.
Great. Thanks, Jay. And Emma, thank you for the question. I'm going to go to Rick now.
I just wanted to circle back to the original question about the end of the school year. The concern I'm hearing is there's burnout both at the teachers and also with the families and the students. But there's also a concern about not being able to take advantage and continue to learn through the end of the school year, and then lose some traction going into the next year. I thought we had initially considered going to a 4-day school week. Would it make sense to do that, which would give everyone a break once a week, but you would still be able to continue to learn through whatever our official end date now is, June 18th. So just wanted to throw that out there because I thought that's what we had talked about a couple weeks ago.
Jay, go ahead.
Sure. We did implement essentially it's a day. It's still a student attendance day or a student instruction day, but we have teachers planning 1 day a week as it stands right now, and that's just lesson planning, ongoing current work. And the need that we've identified here and that we're attempting to secure is 2 weeks to plan all those things that we've been discussing here. Everything from what is the sort of supportive program we need to put in place to bridge the gap, to how will our courses all begin next year. You know, there is additional material that wasn't covered that, as we discussed earlier, may be sequential skills or foundational knowledge they need to bring into whatever that next course is that they've signed up for. And one thought was that the first week of school ends up being that sort of a continuation of the courses they already had. And then we begin the new classes a week later. That's one thought, but all that, even that idea needs to be discussed with the teachers, and we need to come together around a plan to do that. And we have them for our contracted time. So we felt that, I mean, I say we, both the administrative team separately from the teachers, felt that 2 weeks was pushing it, but would be a reasonable amount of time, especially if we also have some ongoing student instruction during that 2 weeks, which Rick gets sort of to your idea. If we're doing, whether we call it credit recovery or whatever it happens to be, and teachers are spending a certain portion of each day that after the 5th working with students still, we're sort of accomplishing, I mean, to a lesser degree though, but we're accomplishing some of that and still instructing students.
And I would just comment on recognizing at the lower grades where most of my experience sits, there isn't enough time in the day right now to be planning for what potentially could happen next year, given just all the planning that goes into what they're going through currently day to day right now, up late at night and all weekend, more than even before this. So I think providing some opportunity for them to start just to focus on what next year is, I think is a really good opportunity for the planning purposes. But I recognize there's still a whole bunch of hands up. So I'm going to go to Kelly Hersey.
It just sounds like Dan's point and Ben's point are really making Jay's request that much more necessary. I think we have fleshed it out pretty well. And are you looking for a vote from us, Jay? Are you looking for a head nod, or what would move us forward?
I think this is something we need to vote on. This is the board basically establishing the calendar. So we would need a motion and a vote.
I'd like to move that we accept what the teachers have made pretty clear that they need, and this is an absolutely unprecedented situation, and I think we ought to take that under consideration. I move to accept that.
Thanks, Kelly. Do we have a second? Kim? Oh, did you have a second or a question? Let's go to a second and then we'll have discussion. Kelly McConnell, second.
I'll second. Yep.
And then now we'll open it up for discussion. Ben.
So,
sorry, Kim.
In comments in terms of the exact date school is done into the burnout, I certainly appreciate the teachers feel burned out and the parents feel burned out. But regardless of when the last day of school is, the parent situation does not change. They're still stuck at home with kids who are stuck at home at various ages. So for me, speaking as a parent who's involved with the schools, the day-to-day won't change, except now there's even less schedule for them. Now there's even less for them to do. So I think it makes it even harder on the parents to take school away when the day-to-day at-home living situation does not change otherwise. That said, regardless of which way we slide on this, one of the things I've been pleasantly surprised by as a Luddite person is the technology involved that my kids are seeing assigned by the teachers using apps and websites I've never heard of. One called Lexia comes to mind, are phenomenal. I'm incredibly surprised by how good they are. So I think that no matter what we do, we should make sure that free access to these websites continues throughout the summer for the kids. And that could kind of help some of these maintenance issues.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to go back to Kim because I cut her off before. I'm sorry.
It's a technical question about, I believe we approve the calendars every year in our respective boards. And I was just wondering if we will have to find some way to formalize this in our next meeting, with the understanding that if we make a decision today, we'll just kind of carry it forward. It was more of a nitty comment.
Jay.
Yeah, so I would suggest that the SAU board entertain an action item that would be authorizing administration to apply for the waiver to ending the school year by hours on June 5th. For regular instruction, and then we could take a later resolution out to the boards approving the amended calendar.
Garrett. Oh, Garrett, I think you're still muted. Or volume down, maybe.
There we go. I'm unmuted.
There you go.
I was unmuted. I think listening to Dan and everyone speak here, I think I would, if I'm going to vote for this, I think it's really getting my arms around getting comfortable with question of priorities. So it sounds like we lose the teachers on June 19th, and we need they'd like 2 weeks to really plan. And I think I'd just be more comfortable if we're going to give them the 2 weeks and, you know, have all the students leave school, and all to Dan's points about, you know, missing some extra education, which, you know, is probably being missed already. And that is just having making sure at these 2 weeks that we've got kind of a plan in place, particularly with the high school. Because I know last week's call, I was a little bit surprised about how the high school is being conducted. And I think we need to really make sure that we're ready to go in the fall if we're doing homeschooling again. So that means, you know, making sure that the teachers can probably start doing graded classes, which means solving the access issues, right, that we've got, which means solving some of the issues with regards to recording classes. There's a whole host of things I heard that, you know, if we don't get those things solved, we're all going to be in the same place again in the fall, and Dan's going to be having the exact same issues with, you know, everyone's going to be in this kind of, well, pass, fail, and that's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So I do think, you know, whether or not the 2 weeks are maybe wasted, if having, you know, luckily we don't have to deal with this again in the fall, but I think these 2 weeks really need to be focused on how to make sure, particularly the high school, can get back and operate in a true online environment with grading and that kind of thing, in case this does have to either go on for a long time, or we go in and out of this situation where every month, you know, kids are in school and a month later they're out of school, because, you know, the pass-fail is not going to work forever. So that'd just be my comment. I think as long as these 2 weeks are really dedicated to that strategy, more so than other things that might be being done by them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Garrett. Lisa, I saw your hand up. I see you typed a question, but if you're more comfortable just asking it, floor is yours.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many unknowns right now, and we are probably going to have a clearer picture in August for what is happening. And regardless of when we end school now and what the teachers do for, if we end early, what the teachers do for those 2 weeks, I'm still thinking we need some planning time before kids walk in the door for what's going to happen in the fall. And I'm wondering, is there a way to buy teacher time to have them come in a little bit early to do some revisionist planning if need be, or some let's go ahead planning, or help kids catch up, you know, during that time? You know, maybe we do what we did before we went to virtual learning, and the kids have a week off and the teachers are planning, and we use that first week, what would have been the first week or 10 days of school, to catch kids up and to have teachers plan. I just feel like kind of no matter what we vote right now, we still need to do something differently in the fall as well. And I recognize this suggestion means that teachers don't get to go on late summer vacations. So I feel weird about that too. I want Jay to have a vacation, and if the only kind he can go is late August, I'm not sure that I'm sold on my idea, but I'm just wondering if we can also have a discussion about a creative way to use preseason football time, preseason soccer time, to have a preseason learning time. I mean, maybe that's what we call it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, Jay.
So we do every year pay teachers to do work on curriculum. It might be teams of teachers within a department, could be individual teachers rewriting a course. We do have limited funds budgeted for that purpose. And Jamie might have a better handle on how much that is. What we're talking about now is a need for every single teacher to be planning during this 2 week period, and really sort of wrapping up what they've done now. But yes, Lisa, to your point, we do have the ability to pay teachers or teams of teachers. But in the context of our concern over revenues and our budget, we got to be really, really to see Jamie.
Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't ask me to look at cuts and keep money down and spending down when I have no idea what's going to happen. And then teachers who make between $300 and $550 a day, have them all come in extra days. So yeah, I'll do whatever you want, but it's like mixed messages. That's all.
Yeah, I get the money question. I guess I'm just wondering if we can creatively use hours this year. Can we creatively use hours next year? And just use the first 10 days of school for planning and catch up purposes, and then have the kids come September 13th or something, like I don't know. It feels like there's a way that we can be creative on both ends, both the finish and the start.
Good idea.
Marcella, hi, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I do see Kelly McConnell's hand up.
So just a quick thought, and I know I seconded this, so I'm personally in favor. I also made a comment in the chat that in my house, every warmer day we get, it is getting harder to get my kids motivated and stuck to a screen and focused on their work. So I think realistically, as we move towards the end of the school year, even in normal circumstances, kids are starting to check out. But to acknowledge some of the other points that have been made, my only concern is if we move that end date to the 5th, that the checkout date starts to happen even further back, right? Which I think is sort of human nature, especially with 13-year-olds. So my thought was, for spring break, we had just a sort of menu of here are things your family can do. I think it might help if sort of mentally the thought was we stop new teaching on the 5th, but here's a menu of things that you can use to consolidate your learning for the next couple weeks for families that want to do that, or who need that time, to Ben's point, to kind of keep kids engaged.
Thanks, Kelly. And then I just had a question, Jay. I know it was, I don't think anyone's brought it up, but in comparison to other districts around the area and what they're deciding, are we looking at kind of comparing, or are we kind of marching to the beat of our own drum?
No, Jamie actually downloaded a listing that the DOE has been putting together.
It's attached under agenda review in the administrative content.
There you go. So you can see.
Shows you the SAU and when they're closing.
Some folks have closed already. Some folks are closing May 15th.
There's a summary on the last page. Sorry, they sent it in a Google format that I couldn't download. I couldn't get it to convert. So.
Okay, thanks. I see it now. Sorry. Jay, go ahead.
I just had a follow-up to some of the comments that were made, and all these neat ideas everyone's throwing out about things we could do. That's exactly what we need the 2 weeks for, is to have. And I made the mistake of not going to the professionals themselves initially on the grading conversation, but it would be great to have the board provide a framework and some of the things that you're concerned about, and then let them figure out what they propose and then bring it back to you. And all those things that you recommended, there are a lot of neat things in there that we could do. I've already got some parents that are upset that we're starting school so early because of the way Labor Day fell this year. But yeah, there's any number of viable options we have. But I think the key this time will be consistency, and making sure we all have some basic elements in that plan that are agreed upon ahead of time, and that we have time to fill in the blanks on, so that there's less variability.
Thanks. Kim, I see your hand up.
Thanks. So I support the 2 weeks if Jay thinks that 2 weeks is enough time. And I also think that we should consider adding the education committee to our further agenda items later this meeting, because I also think that that's a great idea to get not only the board's input, but probably more importantly, the public's input about what would be most helpful for those 2 weeks to plan.
Great. I see Dan, your hand up again.
Yeah, sorry. I just, Kelly, I just wanted to clarify something. Are you, are you basically saying that like keep school going, but the teachers but the teaching is simply relegated to this menu item, but that really what the teachers are doing is doing this preparation? So, I mean, so that effectively we're doing roughly the same thing. We're just not announcing that school is over. I'm just.
So you want me to clarify? So my suggestion was that we end school June 5th.
Okay, fine. All right.
But that before that, we make available, I mean, it could be as simple as a list of those websites that Ben was alluding to, but they had a really nice, and it could just be reproducing what they did for spring break, actually. But just a list of, things that you can use to consolidate skills sort of independently.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks. So in the, thinking about time and how we're moving forward, I know we have a motion on the floor as well as a second. And I'm going to ask someone who has more experience at this. Should we put it to the vote, or does that want to be pulled back, or how do we go forward?
So technically, if you've got a motion and a second, the only way that it can be pulled back is if the original mover withdraws the motion. Otherwise, it's there on the table with a second, and so you would need to call the vote, call the question.
Great, thanks, Neil. I knew I could count on you, Neil. So we do have a motion on the floor to end the school year for students on the 5th of June.
I'm not sure if Marcella heard the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for repeating it just then. That was why my hand was up. I was like, what?
Okay, sorry.
Okay, got it.
That covered the spirit of it, right, Kelly Hersey?
Yes, it does.
And that was how the motion was. Okay. So at this time, I'll take a vote. All in favor, and we'll go kind of around the board. Neil.
Bill, yes.
Garrett.
Garrett, yes.
Kim.
Hartman, yes.
Ben.
Heaney, no.
Kelly Hersey.
Yes. Hersey, yes.
Thank you. Kelly McConnell.
McConnell, yes.
Lisa.
Christie, yes.
Dan.
Rockmore, yes.
Marcella.
Blasi, yes.
Tom.
Camden, yes.
And Rick.
Johnson, yes.
And Hunt, yes. So it passes with 1 no. Oh, just like that, my computer went off. Okay, great. Okay, moving now to the next step in the business requiring discussion, the draft of the 2021 agenda topics for SAU meetings. I'm kind of opening it. Basically, it's the template that we've used, we've discussed. Are there things that folks want to shift, move, add? Yes, Jamie. Oh, Jamie, you're muted.
Okay, I get the buttons messed up there. Is to move up. It was in October this year. We had a meeting in October and the budget presentation was in October. And the public hearing and adoption was actually held in November so that we didn't have to back up the rest of the meeting, the district budget discussions. It seemed to have worked well. It does mean that we have to have another meeting in October, though. I don't think we can build it. We might be able to build it as fast as September if you wanted to do one early October.
Okay. Other comments? Rick.
So I don't know if this is an SAU discussion, but when we had the Lime request, we talked about looking at what we are currently charging Hanover for the tuitions. Is that going to be a board discussion, or is that going to be in one of the committees and then a recommendation out of the committee?
I would defer that to Jay or Jamie.
I'll defer to Jamie on that.
Oh, I think I'm trying to wrap my brain back there 3 months ago because it's all a blur now. I believe that discussion needs to be a formal vote, is what we found out from the lawyers. So we discussed it briefly in Hanover. I don't know the best way to handle that. I would think it's a function between Hanover and Dresden. So
That's what I didn't know if it would be
Yeah.
an SAU
yeah,
kind of vote. But I
think
just
it has
want
to
to make
be-
sure it shows up on one of our calendars. I just don't want this to go another year and we still haven't resolved the issue.
I think it should probably go on Hanover's calendar and Dresden's calendars, because it's got to be formal votes at both of those districts.
Okay.
So we'll do that, Rick. We'll take a look at those and where it might fit appropriately before we bring those out to you in the next couple of meetings.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lisa.
Yeah, just sort of based upon the discussion we just had, I was wondering if we needed to add a separate item for discussing distance learning and COVID in here, because it feels a little different from curriculum plan. It feels a little different from technology, but I don't know. I don't know if we're comfortable having it subsumed by those bigger topics, or whether we want to have a discussion in November about what happened this spring and what may be happening next fall. I don't know. It just, when I was looking at it, it just occurred to me, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it might be good to have a focus point.
Yeah, I mean, I think just by the nature of the next few months, I think it's probably going to come up at some point. Does it need to be written out in the template of our discussion items? I don't see why it shouldn't be added or couldn't be added, but again, I would defer to some of my more experienced board members in this one too. Jay.
John, I think as far as the agenda topic template, this is a really kind of high level. These are things that are repeated year after year for the most part. But we certainly could. I mean, anything related to COVID and our response to it, we've been adding to agendas just because we have to. But if we wanted to have a check-in for 2020, 2021, I would think that probably September would be even more appropriate. We'll be a month into school. We'll have a sense for what's been required of us, and we'll be able to assess what happened over the summer. So that's something that we could do either as an add-on meeting, or we could even push it to August, I suppose.
Okay.
But if
Any
you
other?
if the board
Oops, sorry.
add that in, I can certainly do that. I'll make note to include that.
Yeah,
I just feel
again,
like November might be a little waiting a little while when there's probably plenty to talk about in August.
yeah, I being new to the board, I don't really know how this goes. It just occurred to me, I would hate to lose an opportunity to lose the learning that we're having right now. So
I'm making note in board docs on my note page right now. So we'll do that.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussions on the draft of the agenda? Trying to look around. Okay, moving along to appointment of committee members. We do need committee members for the Wellness Committee and the Risk Management Committee. So if anyone is super excited about one of those committees, or if if there's questions about them, feel free to ask away. I see Kim's hand up first.
Yeah, I think, were you intending that this is the complete list for SAU committees for the next year, or are there other committees? Because I think we might need to add the SAU budget committee, potentially consider a strategic planning committee. We had kind of shifted that to the 4 chairs committee. I don't know, given what's going on, if that makes sense, in addition to the education committee that we had just discussed. So those 3, I would say, if we wanted to make a complete list at this point, I don't know if that's even complete.
Yeah, I
but
think,
at least add those.
I think, yeah, I think these came up because these are 2 required committees that we didn't have set at this point, if I'm thinking back to our planning meeting. So I think that's where we came up with putting these on right now. But if someone feels stronger about adding the others, we can absolutely discuss that. Ben?
I'm happy to be on the wellness committee again.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
I'm sorry, John, do we actually, I think it's a relatively new add-on here. Do we have a definition of what's involved with the risk management committee? I'm not familiar with it.
Jamie, I think we had talked about that during our planning.
I think
Yeah.
it was
I'll leave that to you.
policy.
So you'd probably recognize this as joint loss committee. It's what New Hampshire used to call it, was joint loss committee. So risk management looks at everything that occurs within your schools and school districts regarding, if there's a lot of workers' comp claims, what's the causes? Is it something that's falling through the cracks that we're not taking care of? What are some of the other risks in the way of liability for, students? It's also being a part of possible discussions on emergency planning, to be sure that all of our emergency plans are in place. It's a broad host of items. Buildings, to take a look at the buildings. Are we in compliance? So things like that.
Thank
So
you.
you're looking for 2 members, or working with Jamie and Tony? What's the makeup going to be? And it sounds pretty time commitment intensive based on that definition.
They usually only meet quarterly. That's
so who
what's
sets
required.
the agenda, Jamie? Do you set the agenda, you and Jay?
Nope.
Or
I actually don't sit on it, but you know who I'm going to grab off of if she's taking meeting minutes? Karen. Karen is on the New Hampshire side committees. I don't know if she can unmute and talk to us.
I'm here.
Okay, Karen, can you give a quick overview of like who the makeup is on the different committees?
For the joint loss, there's usually one from each, like you've got a teacher, a para, somebody from the custodial field. In my previous position, we didn't have board members there for joint loss or risk management committee. So it would be a wonderful addition. But there's a makeup that's set up in the New Hampshire not DRA, but the
DOE
code for who has to be on each committee.
Right. And so there's a agenda that it kind of follows, because certain reports come out at certain different times of the year that are required on the New Hampshire side anyway, that are required, that are filed by law, like the fire safety report, the doctor's walk around report, so there's a few things. So those are discussed as they come up, and any other issues that might pop up. So everybody can put information into the agenda.
thanks.
Thank you, Jamie.
Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Dan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not to volunteer for the risk management committee, but but if there is an education committee, I'm happy to be part of that.
Thank you. Jay.
I would love it if we could get that committee spun up and put them to work sooner the better.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
Great. And I think that that does fall at SAU level, not on the other boards, correct? The education one. I think you had said that, Kim, right?
I think so.
Great. Great. Thanks. Jay?
I think back in the day, each of the boards had one. Neil, maybe you or Tom, somebody who they all had them. We've had such a hard time just because everybody has their day jobs and lots of other committee responsibilities. It's been tough to make a triplicate committee. I think if we had it at the SAU level, it could function a lot like policy. And we've talked a lot about wanting to align anyway. So having it at the SAU makes sense to me.
Great. Thanks. Kelly McConnell.
Yeah, we also, it made sense in the past because we didn't have a very centralized curriculum going on. And so, but I served on the ed committee at the Ray School for a while. And most of the time, because of the nature of things, our mission or mission statement for the year was to just, or our goal for the year was just to support the principal and their, so it, and their curriculum. So I think it makes a lot of sense to put it at the SAU.
Great. Rick.
So back to the risk management committee. To me, it sounds very tactical. I'm not sure what would be the role of a board member other than just situational awareness.
Jamie, you're muted.
You're still muted. Do charades.
I don't.
I might. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Kim. Sorry. I have my screen smushed so I can see the other half and I couldn't find myself. Okay. I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I was going to defer to Kim because it's required, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's required as law, which is in our policy that we had to update last year at the and approved across the board. It requires that a board member, it specifies exactly who from each kind of group needs to attend, including, I want to say even like a member of the public or something like that. So it's a very organized committee.
Yeah, used to include a parent usually. Yeah.
So okay. As the only remaining lawyer, I think, on this board, all the other lawyers have stepped down. I will sit on the risk management committee.
All right.
I can take it as well, given my background.
I'll defer to Ben.
Given that I head up a workers' comp insurance company.
Well,
right up your alley then.
It kind of dovetails with wellness, and that's what I had typed in the thing. I saw Ben had his hand up, and it kind of
if they both are truly quarterly, I can do both.
Okay, great.
Excellent. Thank you. I think if anyone else gets really excited about joining one of these or other ones, I think we can push that to the next meeting. But definitely email me and we can move that forward. Moving to curriculum report. Dr. Badams.
John,
I'm sorry, Dan. Yeah.
Sorry. So so did we just establish an education committee or not?
We did not. Well, it sounded like between.
So what's the process then?
Jay.
Just do it.
Yeah, I think, John, as the chair, you can decide to establish a committee and staff it.
Okay. All right. Well, then at this point, I will establish an education committee. And Dan, I know you had mentioned you'd be excited about that. And if anyone else is interested, Lisa, I see your hand up there. So.
Okay, sorry. And now we decide the terms of that, like how often we meet. I mean, sorry. I mean, what's the,
Yeah. I will defer to Dr. Badams on this one.
So I'll help with that. I think it would be great if we had 3 people on that committee. There's a lot of work. 3 seem to work well with the policy committee. So if we could have a 3rd, that'd be wonderful. Aha.
Okay. I see Kelly McConnell and Kelly Hersey's hands up. I mean, if both of you are interested, I don't see why having a 3rd and a 4th is a bad idea.
Do you need an odd number for voting purposes?
we really don't vote. We bring recommendations. I mean, there have been a few times when we've had to decide if we were concurring on our opinion about policy, and then we bring it to you as a whole board. I would anticipate the same thing. And if there are 4 of you that want to do this work, that's great.
Great.
So
Great.
Kelly, Lisa, and Dan. And then we can appoint a chair when we meet. And I will make sure that Kate gets us a meeting soon.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thank you. All right, moving right along, we'll go to, where was I? We're at the curriculum report, providing an update on the curriculum audit performed during the year and steps to be taken.
Wonderful segue. And again, I'll just repeat what I said at the Dresden meeting last week. I've been briefed by the Penn folks. They're waiting to present to our curriculum folks and the board on May 20th. We'll attempt to schedule something. They seem to be pretty flexible about that. And that's kind of where we are. I also reached out to Mark Dolan. I feel comfortable rekindling the strategic planning committee work. We have 2 meetings left to try to get to a vision of a graduate before we launch into the heavy lift of actually doing planning, which this education committee will be super helpful with. So we're looking at a couple of dates in May, and I'll get those out to everybody who's already on that committee, most likely tomorrow or Wednesday. And then we will hopefully pick that work up where we started. It should be easy to accomplish through Zoom. And if we can have the vision of a graduate done, we can start to synthesize the curriculum audit, which many of you will be really not surprised by. Then we also have the equity audit that we've been doing. So those surveys are coming in. So it'd be really nice to see what we have there. And we'll have several data points to help inform the work we do as an education committee and in the larger strategic planning process. So that's where we are, May 20th. John, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. Rick, I see your hand up. Rick, did you have a question? Oh, it's gone now. Thank you.
I lowered it.
Thank you. Any questions for Jay on the curriculum piece? Okay. Moving ahead to DJR fiscal management, discussing policy. DJ Business Administrator Teague would like to discuss bringing forth the discussion and the changes highlighted in yellow that I think we had discussed at the Dresden meeting. So this might be a touch point on that. Same. Does anyone have questions, or do we want Jamie to quickly go through it again?
No questions.
No questions?
Move the question. Vote the question. No.
Okay. Looking at next year's meeting schedule for approval in June, is there anything that pops out that might need to be shifted? I know we talked about the agenda topics earlier, but now on just the meeting schedule that we have laid out, recognizing that there will probably be added meetings. Kelly McConnell.
I just wanted to clarify for new board members and any members of the public who might be watching that SAU meetings typically start at 6. So that's our regular schedule for SAU meetings, and then Dresden meetings start at 7. So that's been our traditional schedule. Just to make sure that was clear. It's a little confusing in that list. So.
Thank you, Kelly. Jamie?
It also looks like the schedule has been updated, but the other document wasn't. So, because it has an October meeting and a November meeting on it. So.
Okay.
So.
All right. No comments, questions there. Oh, I see Ben. Yeah.
So there's really no SAU meeting between November and March?
It's generally SAU meetings are just quarterly. But
really?
I think, Ben, in our first year on the board, there were quite a few added meetings.
Yeah, just seems like they're always there.
Right.
Guess that's just me.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, first reading of policies. Review the following policies for first reading: GBCD, background investigations and criminal records check, and JRA and FERPA. Is there someone from the policy committee that would like to discuss? Or anyone else? Jay.
Every once in a while in the policy committee, we get a couple that are just boilerplate and we have state law to comply with. And Kim's saying, no, these weren't them.
No, not all of it. It mostly is, but yeah, there is one change.
There were changes to our background check policy that the state implemented, and we needed to make sure our policy was compliant with that. And Kim, did you want to go on about the second?
Sure. So if we're talking, sorry, I'm trying to pull up some. So we're talking GBCD, the background investigation. So for the most part, this is aligning with state law. We had a discussion in the old policy committee, because I'm actually not on the SAU policy committee right now, but when this was discussed, and this is also pre-COVID, and we can talk about what we should do about this. But as the policy is currently stated, what a change that the committee made was we said that the district should pay for all substitute, to all staff and volunteers criminal background checks. The prior policy only excluded substitutes. So substitutes had to pay for their own criminal background checks, and were only reimbursed, I believe, after 5 completed days within each district. And so, that could be quite weighty on kind of your pay if you're thinking you're going to substitute a few times to pay for your own background check. We had acknowledged, and for several years now, that getting quality substitutes is difficult. And so we thought that this seemed to, as a committee, we agreed that it seemed to kind of preclude substitutes unnecessarily, and said that we should just have it a simpler policy. District pays for all background checks. It pays for staff, it pays for teachers, faculty, pays for volunteers, but not substitutes. So that is a broadening of the policy.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Tom?
Maybe I misunderstood you, Kim, but doesn't this policy say that they are required to pay for their background check? That's what I read on the bottom of the first page.
It should be in the bottom. Sorry, and I'm clicking all over.
So it's the last paragraph of the first page.
I believe the last sentence of the first paragraph, all criminal background checks will be paid for by the district.
Okay, then there's something, it conflicts with the last paragraph of that section then.
And nice catch, Tom. I think you're right.
I think you could just delete that last paragraph, unless you want the employee of a contractor's business to pay for it.
Sorry, I'm not seeing where you're seeing.
It's the paragraph right before criminal history records check, the last full paragraph of page 1.
I don't see it.
It begins
Last
any
one.
applicant.
Okay.
That is a that is a
Yeah, Ben.
that is a good point though, because I read that paragraph at the bottom of page 1 as more of a subcontractor issue possibly. And I don't think we discussed that on the policy committee, did we?
No, we didn't.
Should we take that up at a future policy committee meeting? Because Jay, do we regularly have subcontractors in the schools?
Not often, but we do, and that's something that the law did address.
Kelly McConnell.
That would be like our food service personnel, right? Would be a big one. And so there are a few. And I guess I could see the logic for saying that the criminal check piece of it would be borne by the contractor, not by the district in that situation.
Right.
So we maybe just want to make some distinctions there.
Yeah, transportation, bus drivers, cafe food service, folks who do grounds maintenance, keeping. I think that's the bulk of them that are on site without people with them.
Right,
They're
because
being monitored. Right.
sorry, because I would think I mean, they're also bearing like the liability for their employees and all that. So I think it makes sense for them to be doing the
Mhm.
criminal background check piece of it and paying for that and such.
And they do.
Okay.
So
Any
that
other?
needs to be
Yeah,
revised.
go ahead, Jay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Moving ahead to our board retreat date, moving it from, shoot, I think it was supposed to be this weekend or next weekend to August.
John, we need to talk about
yeah.
the second policy. We didn't talk about FERPA.
Oh, are there comments on that, or do we want to clarify it?
I can just quickly say that
Yeah.
this is definitely the changes that were made by law with using NHSBA recommended language and certain aspects of kind of directory information is considered to be more protected or not. So some things were removed and some things were added. So that's the main change. It's all legal.
Neil.
John, I don't mean to go back, but the
Yep.
previous policy, does that apply to coaches?
Jay.
Yes, our coaches need to receive clearances.
Then
Yeah,
my
and
follow-up-
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, so well, the follow-up question is then, are we doing it every year? Since don't we, I mean, we rehire coaches on an annual basis, right? So are we doing the background check again annually? Jamie silently
Jamie.
says no.
Yeah.
So, no, if there's not a break-in service of, I think it's more than 9 months, it's because if they're on a regular cycle, you're not required by law to have to redo it every single year, as long as there's not been a break-in service. Otherwise, you'd have to do your whole entire staff every single year, and you don't. I believe it used to be up to a year, but I think HR, but I believe they backed it up to 9 months, perhaps.
Okay. Jay?
The other thing to keep in mind is the state for certified personnel passed the code of conduct and the code of ethics that has a mandatory reporting requirement that if anyone gets arrested for something, whether they're convicted or not, they need to report that. And you passed policy that more broadly applies that code of conduct to all of our employees. So for any fear that someone could be cleared and then have a significant amount of time pass and maybe do something wrong, and then if nothing else, we have the protection of a requirement that they report. Whether they do or not, of course, is another thing, but that's there.
Great, thank you. Are we good with both of these policies? It's like the FERPA one was more of the legal issues, and yep. Okay, so let's move ahead to our retreat date. Potentially moving to a date in August that may or may not happen. I guess I'd open it up for discussion. I see a thumbs up from Kelly McConnell.
I was looking forward to being on stores weekend. Nice and
This past
warm.
weekend was nice and warm, yeah. Do we have do we want to set a date for it with the knowledge that potentially we'd have to reschedule again, or I guess I would open it up to all you. Jay.
Rather than trying to coordinate schedules right now, do you want me to just have Kate poll the board and try to get a date?
That would be great.
Righty.
Everyone's good with that? Excellent. All right. Business requiring action. This is to approve policy DFA as required to do so annually. I would take a motion. Kelly Hersey.
Move to approve policy DFA investments as presented.
And a second. Kim, any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call. I'll go Neil,
Odell, yes.
Garrett,
Garrett, yes.
Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Dan. Oop, I think we lost his audio. Are we muted? I saw a thumbs up. Marcella,
DeBlassi, yes.
Tom,
Camden, yes.
Rick,
Johnson, yes.
Ben,
Heaney, yes.
Kelly,
McConnell.
McConnell, sorry. Kelly Hersey,
Hersey, yes.
and Lisa.
Christie, yes.
Ben, did I get you?
Yes, you did.
I got you. Okay. And do I have to go back to Dan because I think he was muted, but I saw a thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Rockmore, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Approval of expenditures. Anyone
again?
like to make a motion? Sorry, Kelly Hersey.
Move to approve
second.
expenditures from March 2020 to May 1, 2020 in the amount of $172,319.55 as presented.
Great. And a second. Ben. Any discussion? And we'll go around. Neil,
Odell, yes.
Garrett, yes. Or Garrett,
Garrett,
Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Dan,
Rockmore, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassi, yes.
Tom,
Camden, yes.
Rick,
Johnson, yes.
Ben,
Heaney, yes.
Kelly McConnell,
McConnell, yes.
Lisa,
Christie, yes.
Kelly Hersey,
Hersey, yes.
and Hunt, yes. All right. And approval of minutes. Can I get a motion? Kelly Hersey.
I move to approve the minutes of March 17, 2020 SAU board meeting as presented.
And a second. Lisa. Great. And we'll go around
I
unless there's any discussion.
just one small comment. It says all meetings by roll call, and it should say all votes by roll call.
Noted. Any other comments, questions? Okay, Neil,
Odell, yes.
Garrett,
Garrett, yes.
Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Dan,
Rockmore, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassi, yes.
Tom,
Camden, yes.
Rick,
Johnson, yes.
Ben,
Heaney, yes.
Kelly McConnell,
McConnell, yes.
Lisa,
Christie, yes.
and Kelly Hersey,
Hersey, yes.
and Hunt, yes. Passes unanimously. Report of the chair. The only thing I would say is our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 9th at 6 p.m. And I know we've said it at multiple meetings, but I don't think it can be said enough at this time. Just a thank you to the administration, to all the teachers, to the families. I just think thanks should go around to everyone because we recognize there is burnout, it is hard work, and everyone is really chipping in. And as a parent, as a spouse of a as a spouse of an employee and as a school board member, it is really encouraging to see the support from the administration personally and professionally during this time. So thank you to everyone. And I will move to Jay, your turn.
Right, thanks. I echo your thanks to everyone. I know it's we keep on saying it's unprecedented. We've not had to do this stuff, but it is a challenge. And I feel like everybody's been extremely graceful in the way we've been dealing with it. And I'm really proud to be associated with this group. I said last at the Dresden meeting that I think we're going to be squandering a great opportunity if we don't learn from this. And I think the last two meetings, I know Dresden was a marathon, but in that meeting and this meeting, I feel like we've talked more about education than in probably the previous 20 meetings. And that is something that I think will change. I think it'll change once we really get our traction on the strategic plan and we start to dig in. I also think I think it was Lisa who mentioned this evening, reflecting on what we've learned. There's a lot that we've learned that is sort of stuff that already was there that we either were overlooking or it has become a little more glaring that we really need to act on. And I'm excited about it. I think everybody involved will benefit from this occasion coming about so that we can refocus. And there are some real gains we can realize from this afterwards. Getting through it and then getting into this next phase of planning and deciding where we go next, and then what are the larger lessons to be learned, I think is going to be important. So we just need to chip in and share in that work and hold each other accountable for it too. Other than that, we're moving forward. We've got a couple of big things on my plate right now. Are the well, one of them is a deferred assistant superintendent search. At the same time, we're talking about doing curriculum work. I have put that off. I've contacted the candidates that I had actually contacted all of the ones that we were considering interviewing and explained the situation. They were very understanding, and most of the ones that I thought had promise have said that they'd hold out for us and that they'll wait and that they'd like to remain in the system. So once we have a better handle on what our financial situation is going to be and we decide that it's safe to move forward, I'm really eager to get that partner in here to start actually working on curriculum. And just what I'm seeing in the audit report so far, it just bears out what we've already acknowledged, that while we can say on one hand that we're doing some wonderful things in classrooms, showing the public that through any kind of careful documentation is another matter altogether. And so we'll at least have a way forward. That's about all I've got. I don't want to make this another 11 o'clock meeting, but there are blessings in this whole thing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Jay. And now to the business administrator's report. Jamie. And you are on mute still. And while she's unmuting, I will note, Kelly McConnell, please be careful of that bear outside your window.
What bear? Oh. Okay, I'm unmuted.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at the SAU 70 unaudited overview report, and I'm just going to give you a couple of quick highlights because we'll have a more in-depth one in June. As you know, we don't really have a lot of revenue adjustments usually because most of our revenue comes from district assessments. We have earned more interest to date, and there have been some prior year refunds and miscellaneous receipts. So we'll project a variance, and I'm being very cautious about projected additional receipts on earned interest, just because we all know that the markets and everything are a little bit crazy. So we'll project a variance right now of about $5,367 for a variance that's favorable. In the expenditure budget balance, you can see I've done them by objects like we looked at the other early ones. We have some savings in salaries because we hired a few folks later than the beginning of the year or the beginning of their contract period. We have some savings in benefits, taxes, insurance, retirement, all of those types of benefits. We have savings in the staff development and public relations lines for obvious reasons, right? A lot of our professional development opportunities were canceled from March through June, and that's usually the heaviest period for our type of professional development. Let me talk to you really quickly about the unfavorable budget balances in the 400 series, which is your contracted maintenance, equipment, services, and other project lines. So we have an addition of a financial software cost for our technology security. We are bringing the software, instead of supporting it in-house, we're going to host it at the place of business where the software comes from in order to meet the new technology security requirements. That was an unbudgeted dollar amount of $6,310. We couldn't hold off on that in order to be in compliance. Also in the section for SAU-wide meetings, we did have the specialist Jerry King come in and speak to all the administrators across all the districts about being kind to one another and stop gossiping in the office environments. And it was a very good bonding meeting. And also on the copier expense, we switched to an updated copier, and actually the monthly cost is cheaper. The old one was 8 years old, but we bought an expanded deck for the unit. So that cost us $1,200 because we lease our copiers instead of purchasing them. In the account 500 line section, travel, transportation, tuition, communication, and insurance, we had some additional travel in our administrative support lines. We had 3-4 people attending different classes, including Kate and April, and then Bridget has travel in there as well, as she takes meeting minutes and notes and attends some of the Vermont human resource trainings. We had some expanded travel in my line, which some of that's going to get charged out to the school districts because it's for the food service routes and all that we've been maintaining. We didn't break that out yet for the paybacks. And then the technology director had attended a couple of professional development opportunities that had not been budgeted for prior. In the, let's see, 600 lines, supplies, textbooks, softwares, and utilities. Let me see where we're over there. Our phone line is over by 2,000, which we knew that, and we've been looking into a change there by going to VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. Josh and Tony have been looking through that. And in our recruitment lines, but our recruitment and our advertising lines really are, they should be put together because it's the same type of situation. Also in our 600 lines, we did a frontline expansion purchase. That's a human resources software. It was unbudgeted. We had to make that decision at the end of last fiscal year, so it was put through as a pre-encumbrance. It was $7,125. It takes care of 3 different types of human resource reporting needs. I could probably think about it, but I'll get back to you with more about that because right now it's not on the top of my head. In the 700 account lines, equipment, there's a few things in there. When our new technology director got here, there were some upgrades that needed to happen, including a new server in order for us to be able to take care of all of the hosting needs for some of the different softwares. And that was $5,550. And then my Mac laptop died completely, and so did Kate's. And those were unbudgeted. I think mine was probably 8 or 9 years old. I don't know, Josh could probably tell you. And I know Kate's was 8 or 9 years old. So those two together, let's see, were approximately $3,200. So that's what drove that equipment line over. So at the end of the day, we'd look at an expenditure budget balance right now of $13,257. That may go up and down a little bit more before we close the year. We had projected a fund balance last year when we built this at $17,004. The actual fund balance when we closed everything out came in at $50,282. So I'm projecting a 1920 fund balance to carry forward because in the SAU budget, it doesn't go back to anywhere. It just goes against the next budget you build, of 68,907 available. Did I lose you?
No, great. Just wanted to make sure you were good. Any questions for Jamie?
Good.
Excellent. All right, moving along to, we do have a need for a non-public session, so I would ask for someone to motion to move into non-public. Ben,
Moved to enter into non-public session under RSA 91-A:32C personnel.
and a second. Kelly Hersey. And we'll take a roll call. Neil,
Odell, yes.
Garrett,
Garrett, yes.
Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Dan,
Rockmore, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassi, yes.
Tom,
Kenny, yes.
Rick,
Johnson, yes.
Ben,
Keeney, yes.
Kelly Hersey,
Hersey, yes.
Kelly McConnell,
McConnell, yes.
and Lisa,
Christie, yes.
and Hunt, yes. And I see if in the chat bar there is a link to click into the new one. And do we have a need to come back here after? I don't believe we do, but Jay.
So John, on the roster, on the agenda for non-public, we've got administrator contracts to discuss, and then I think you're talking about my evaluation, and typically I'm not
Yes.
for that conversation. So I don't know that there's anything to vote on after non-public, so
Right.
you could probably adjourn from there.
Okay. Okay. And you probably will not be joining us in the non-public.
Sure, I'll bow out.
Great. And just for technology question, click the link and then does that automatically kick us out of this current meeting?
I would copy the link first, leave this meeting, and then paste that into a browser in the URL, and it should take you there.
Super. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Jamie?
I don't know if I should go or not go.
Jay?
Jamie, yeah, definitely for the first part, because we're going to talk about SAU for administrator contracts.
Okay.
So definitely.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
That was just my
Kelly McConnell.
clarification. Sorry, I think we want Jay for the first part. It sounded like Jay wasn't going to join us, but
Oh.
we want him for the first
No,
part.
I'll be there.
Okay, super.
For the first part, and then we'll ask Jay to disappear.
Awesome.
Right. Any other questions? All right. Leaving this meeting, logging into the next one.
Hey. Did I join the wrong meeting?
You took over the seat that does not vote in Dresden.
Do you have the non-public link?
Could you just send it to me again? I'm sorry. I somehow managed to mess it up.
No problem. No
Sorry.
problem.
You're absolutely encouraged to participate, speak, share your opinions and thoughts about things, but you're not allowed to vote.
Thank
And I
you.
don't know,